All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and call the Courthouse and Property Committee to order. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, we had to make some adjustments due to some of the IT needs for tonight, as well as we had a significant number of people stating that they wanted to be here. We're going to start the meeting with a word of prayer as soon as Commissioner Maddox makes it back to his seat, and he's going to ask a word of prayer for us.
Thank you. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to come to you tonight, Lord, to do the people's business. Lord, we pray that you would have your hand over this meeting. Lord, I pray that calm minds will prevail and that we would learn what we need to learn to make the best decision for this county. Lord, thank you again for all the citizens that have come tonight. Lord, thank you for each home and house that's represented. Lord, I pray that you would keep your hand over us. Thank you again for all your many blessings. And it's in your name I pray. Amen.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Maddox. All right, we're going to do a roll call. Diane Neely. Troy Thompson.
Here.
Keith Davis.
Here.
Adam Thomas.
Here.
Chair's present, so we do have a quorum. All right, we're going to start out this meeting. I have a brief statement. I just want to make sure that we understand the reason for being here, as well as just kind of laying out kind of how the meeting will go tonight. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight for a study session on Resolution 25-14, which seeks the Commission's approval for a private act concerning the Bedford County Wastewater Authority. This item was placed on the agenda by Commissioner Vick and was presented on February 11th, 2025 by Chairman Graham. Commissioner Jason Boyette requested that this item be tabled for 30 days pending a study session with the Courthouse and Property Committee. The Commission unanimously approved this motion to table the item and conduct a study session for Courthouse and Property Committee and to make a recommendation. I would like to thank the IT department for facilitating all the technology necessary for tonight's meeting. We shifted our plans earlier in the week to accommodate the possibility of a large crowd as well as numerous IT needs. We also want to make sure and ensure a comfortable experience for everybody involved. I also want to express my gratitude to Suzanne and the Mayor's office for distributing the agenda and making all necessary notifications throughout the process as we made changes. Lastly, thank you to the Commission members for taking time out of your day to be present. I think this is extremely important in the democratic process to be able to facilitate and understand ways before we go to vote on them. Again, we want to be able to best serve our citizens moving forward, and we want to make informed decisions. We want to ensure that everybody that signed up for public comments or wants to make a comment will have the opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes. We will be diligent in adhering to this 3-minute to respect everybody's time. Due to the time constraints of one of our speakers, we will move directly into a Zoom session with one of our experts immediately following my comments. Yesterday, Commissioner Vick requested that a representative from the Tennessee Department of Environmental Conservation be allowed to speak tonight. Unfortunately, I was not informed of this speaker until yesterday. However, I was able to speak with him yesterday and prepare for this meeting. So I feel that it is in order to allow him to speak unless anyone on the Courthouse and Property Committees would see any objections for the late notice. All right, seeing none, I think that it is appropriate. We'll put him on the agenda immediately following public comments. I want to remind everybody that this is a committee meeting. All committee members are free to speak at any point. If you are not on the Courthouse and Property Committee, please seek recognition before making any comments or questions. I will maintain order throughout this meeting to ensure that we are respectful for everybody's time. We will adhere to the committee rules and stay focused on specific topics relating to wastewater systems and to the authority itself. This is not a platform for lengthy speeches or attempts to divert from the purpose of this meeting tonight. At the end of this meeting, prior to adjournment, this committee will make a recommendation regarding Resolution 25-14, either favorable or unfavorable for the Commission. With that being said, I want to start with our first speaker, Mr. Stephen Wyatt, an engineer with MTAS, who's joined us via Zoom. I appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule. He's an extremely busy man, as well as one of the few experts in this field specifically designed to work with MTAS. So, Mr. Wyatt, I'll kind of turn it over to you to give us a little bit of explanation about kind of who you are, your background, and then any comments. Just so the commission does know, I did provide him a copy of this resolution to review.
Good evening. I hope it is pretty there as it has been today. It's been beautiful the last couple of days. I am with MTAS, Municipal Technical Advisory Service. I'm a utility operations consultant, and as of September 1st, I'll be here 27 years. Prior to that, I spent a little bit over 17 years with the Jackson Energy Authority. So I'm a grade 4 water operator, grade 4 wastewater operator, grade 2 distribution, and spent about 3 years in natural gas. So I go from Memphis to Bristol for water, wastewater, and natural gas for any of the 345 cities in Tennessee. CTES, our sister organization, doesn't really have a person like me, so occasionally I step in to provide information to counties about water and wastewater systems. And so that's what I'm here tonight, is to try to answer your questions and try to give you some facts if you want me to about different things and just some observations. And so I'm ready for questions, or I'm willing to talk about the comptroller's role if you decide to go with this route with this utility. That the TDEC is there. I was going to talk about that too. I still may briefly talk about the TDEC role, but I'm just trying here to provide you information and not sway you one way or the other. My role is just to provide you information. So I'm going to open it up for questions.
All right. Does anybody on the courthouse and property have any questions for Mr. Wyatt? All right, Mr. Wyatt, I do have a couple before we kind of get into overall questions. Number one, if this authority is established, will it or any other body have the ability to regulate it, or will it operate as an independent entity accountable only to its members?
Looking at your draft, and I am not an attorney. Let me just say that right off the bat. I am not an attorney, so this is not a legal opinion. If you've got a counselor there, I'll be glad for him to step in. But looking at your draft, section 4, the county will create the board, and then it's up to that board then to provide its bylaws, appoint other officers, and move forward. So once that, it's my, just reading this from a layman's approach, once the county appoints that first board and it's approved, then y'all are out of it. They're going to be a self-appointing commission as a quasi-government. They will have rights as a government. They can't tax or anything like that, but they will be a quasi-government body within Bedford County.
All right, I do have a couple more. Wastewater is governed by a different TCA code than utility districts. Could you explain the main differences? And I referenced TCA 68221-601.
Okay. Wastewater systems in Tennessee can be privately owned. Okay. Those privately owned systems are set up as a private corporation through that type. If you're a publicly owned wastewater system, you can be set up as a municipal wastewater system through the powers that are given to a city by its charter. The charter then allows that entity to create its own wastewater utility. Utility districts are set up by a separate set of law, I think it's 782, which then allow a water or wastewater utility district to be set up under that set of laws. What you're looking at is a set of laws, TCA 68221, which is to set up a water and wastewater authority either by a government or a county government or a city government, which is different than a utility district, but it's similar. A fourth way to set up a public utility is to have an energy acquisition corporation. But since there's no power involved here, that set of laws which allows that type of utility to be formed is not available to y'all. So with y'all in that county, since it's not, the county could set it up if they want to as a county department. Or you can go this route and use that separate set of laws in TCA to set up a wastewater authority within Bedford County within certain geographic service areas.
Okay, Mr. Wyatt, I do have several more, but I want to open it up to the other commissioners to see if anybody else may have some questions before I ask my last couple. All right. Just a kind of a hypothetical question based on if this is passed, would this put this particular authority in direct competition with Bedford County Utility District and the Shelbyville Power and Water regarding wastewater services?
It could. It could also include War Trace and Bell Buckle. They have water and wastewater systems. It could, based upon service area boundaries, I was looking at your draft bill that you want to do for this private action, Section 6. I'm going to read it to you. And it's got a typo in it, I believe. Section 6 says jurisdiction of service area. This authority shall have the exclusive right to provide wastewater services as the county's municipal boundaries are expanded by annexation or other means. I think that's supposed to be cities' municipal boundaries. So if this passes, then that's telling me, if I read this correctly, and I could be wrong, that you would then landlock the wastewater systems for those three communities outside of what their current service area is or urban boundaries would be up to this commission and not them properly. So there could be some possible conflict there in the future, but I don't know.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, next question is can taxpayer funds be used to support this authority, or will it solely be the responsibility of its members? If that's the case, this means that this commission wouldn't have any financial oversight over this particular authority or board, correct?
The way your draft, it appears that once y'all set it up, y'all won't have any authority over this. And this would become an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund and within the state of Tennessee is solely funded by the rates and fees and service charges that it charges its customers. Okay? Tax dollars could be to supplement a utility division, but that was taken out of TCA a few years ago. So there's not a way to supplement tax dollars into the system. So I don't see how the county would be supporting this system. It would be solely based upon the rates and fees charged to the users. Now I've got a question which I'm just going to throw out there. I don't know where you're going to get the money on the front end to start this venture. Okay? I don't know if county money can be used to start this venture for lawyers and engineering fees and all this stuff like that. That's a question that somebody at the county would have to ask the comptroller's office, is may we use this money to start this venture? I don't know.
All right, thank you for that. And my last one, you kind of went into it with government versus private, but when it comes to private, because again, we're looking at that first step of authority, but down the road, if it did happen to go private, are private companies attending to extend the lifespan of systems or components to increase profits, and are the systems less efficient due to that focus on profitability?
I have seen some private systems which have done an excellent job maintaining their facilities. Okay? But I've seen others which have not and have maybe let things slide. So I wouldn't make a general statement one way or the other. I've seen it both ways in my 26 years. So you don't know what you have. A private for-profit company here in Tennessee is Tennessee American in Chattanooga. They've been around a long time, and they are a private for-profit water company, and I think they do a fairly decent job maintaining that system. But then I know of a few other places where that has not happened. So you don't know what you've got till you've got it and had it for a few years. That would be my answer.
All right, thank you for that. Again, does anybody from the commission have any questions for Mr. Wyatt? Okay.
Mr. Wyatt, currently we have nothing relative here in the county overseeing a step system that is here, and so that's where we are right now as to what to do so that possibly the landowners of such system wouldn't come back on this county commission board looking for help or in distress if their system were to fail. So that's where we are right now. We have nothing.
Okay. I've been to Shelbyville 2 years ago talking about the same issue with the city of Shelby and the utility department. Let me just give you some thoughts. If there's a failing utility within the state of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee has the right, either through the comptroller's office or through TDEC maybe, or the court system, to take that failing utility, either financially or maintenance or whatever, and merge it with the next closest largest utility to run that system, and that system would cease to exist. Then the cost then would be taken over by that new utility, and they would have to then bring it up to specs. So there have been mergers, particularly on the financial side. The Tennessee Comptroller's Office has a group called Tennessee Board of Utility Regulations, which will, if this utility is formed, they will fall underneath their authority if they fail to have a positive statutory change in net position continually. If they have 2 years of negative statutory change in net position, they'll be placed underneath the board's authority. Now, let me explain statutory net position. It's a GASB term, which the comptroller's has added a thing. If you look at your audits, with a utility, it's got your operating expenses, your revenue, and your non-operating expenses and revenue. And at the bottom, it's got a term that says change in net position. And all that is auditor's way of calculating whether it's positive or negative. You made more money than you spent. With the GASB rule, they also include grants, contributed capital. With the statutory change in net position, the comptroller does not allow those to happen. So what that means is that you have to charge more for your fees and services, and you have to charge depreciation of all your assets and have money that's positive at the end of every year. If you have 2 years that are negative, then the comptroller's office can then take steps through courts or whatever to either fix the problem, have you fix the problem, or eventually take the utility away from you. So that is a possibility that this utility could be, if it's mismanaged, and it's just a possibility, I'm not saying it's going to happen, be given to another utility at some point in the future. That is, mechanism is available. Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Sir, we don't have a utility formed, an authority formed, and to do this. So right now, we have nothing, is what I'm telling you. And
yes,
so that is why we're here tonight to gather the information as to what might be best for us.
I have cities in Tennessee that don't have sewers at all, ma'am, because they can't afford them. Sewer is very expensive. The operation and maintenance is very expensive. And it's doable. It is doable.
But we don't have sewers. We have nothing.
I'm just saying, that's why a lot of places don't have anything. I've got complete cities don't have sewer at all. Everybody's on the septic tank because the city can't afford it. So this is a common problem in parts of Tennessee. It's a cost thing. You determine how much you want to spend and if the citizens can cover that cost. That's all it is. It's a matter of dollars and cents. We can put it in. It's going to cost this much money to put it in. It's going to cost this much money to run it. Can our citizens handle it?
And so just to follow up to that, Mr. Wyatt, just to kind of go maybe clarify, currently the three systems that are in this system is Bell Buckle, Bedford County Utility District, which does not do wastewater currently, and Shelbyville Water and Power. So if a system failed in our county currently, where would that authority or where would that responsibility lie? Would that be on the county, or would that be rolled over to one of those other districts that are currently housing that?
The state agency would make that decision. It would probably go to the largest utility within the area, or you never know. They could come back to y'all, but I don't know. That is up to the state of Tennessee. That is a decision I can't tell you, but it would be up to the state of Tennessee, the comptroller's office, or TDEC. Usually it's the largest utility in the area.
Commissioner Thomas?
I know it would just be an estimate, but are you able to provide an estimate on how much something like this would cost to establish?
I have no idea what area you're talking about. You know, if you're talking about a step system, you know, that's going to cost you a few $1,000s to put in that step system. I don't know how many miles of line you're going to do. Are you only going to put in a collection system and pipe that sewage to somebody else for treatment? Or are you going to put in a collection system and a treatment plant? I've got a town here in West Tennessee is fixed to put in a 2 million gallon a day wastewater plant. Just the plant. $28 million. That's just a wastewater plant. They've got pipes in the ground. It's for growth, just the plant. So I have no idea because I don't know how far you're going to spread. So you're going to talk, a few $1,000s per household, not counting the miles of line for the collection system. You're going to have licensed operators who are in charge of the collection system, and if you have treatment, a licensed operator in charge of the treatment plant. So that's going to be licensed staff that's going to have to be there. You have to get an engineer design stamped and approved by the state. So, there's a lot of things that we'll have to do if that system goes online. But cost, I have no idea because I don't know how big you want to go.
All right, Mr. White, our county attorney, John T. Bobo, wanted to make a statement.
I just want to get some clarity. Am I on? Okay. I think the question that was asked by Commissioner Yaki was, does the county reach any point of liability? And I understand exactly what you say about the comptroller. I'm involved in one of these mergers right now, not in this county. But the county will not have a system per se. It will be, as you pointed out earlier, a separate system. And if something failed today, let's say something failed out 231, the nearest and largest is Chevrolet Power. And I don't think there would be any pathway that a private step system for a condominium project out the highway could invoke, and I don't even think the state would do this, Chevrolet Power to take it over. This is clearly a draft, and I've talked to the chairman of this committee, and we decided not to redraft it until after this meeting. But the draft is going to cover regulatory authority only. There will be no operation per se. And the way the draft and the private act will be drafted, even though I agree with you totally, once that group is appointed, and there's been a lot of discussion, there was even some suggestion that it be made up of all commissioner members, which may or may not be the way that ends up. But it would just be regulatory oversight on privately owned step systems. As we've been explained at the county level, now the state has a very loose set of regulations, and that we could enhance the regulations required in Bedford County. Now, although I would ask you, what do you think the impact of this legislation that's currently made its way through the House and it's on the way to the Senate relative to regulation of step systems may render this moot? Are you familiar with what's working through the state legislature now?
No, sir, I am not. Not any current legislation on step systems. I do know that TDEC has added new language to their NPDES and their operating purposes for governments and step systems about ownership. They did that 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So I'm not familiar with any new changes in that's going through the House right now.
There's one coming through now that gives private developers a trump card if they cannot meet the standards either of TDEC or the county. Looks like.
Oh, you're talking about where they don't have to get TDEC approval?
That is correct. Or county approval. And I think that's going to make it through, which may have a big impact on everything, which is probably not the wish of this group here. But if this thing is set up like it's planned to be set up, in answer to Ms. Yaki's question, I don't see how the liability gets to the county if we set it up correctly. Now, would you agree or disagree with that?
Yes, I think you can set it up where your liability is reduced. But I'm just dealing, my tenure with the state and being around the state, they have ways of changing the game plan on you down the road.
I understand.
There's always that possibility.
But as it currently exists, if properly set up, we can insulate ourselves from liability. I just wanted that cleared up.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, does any other commissioners have a question for Mr. Wyatt? Mr. Wyatt, thank you so much for taking time to talk to this group. Again, we want to try to gain as much knowledge as we can, and I think we did with your testimony here. So I appreciate you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us tonight.
Okay. If y'all don't need me, I'm going to log off, and good luck with your venture.
Thank you, sir. All right, just due to time, our county attorney, John T. Bobo, is needing to step out. I just wanted to make sure before he did, that if any of the commissioners had a question specifically to John T., we could go ahead and address that before he has to step out.
I have, so what you're talking about that's going through the legislature right now, if we do all this and it goes through, this is all,
If the TDEC boys, the TDEC boys understand that a lot better than I do, and I think it's got a much better than 50-50 chance of getting through because of the push behind it, then it would basically say whether it's the state TDEC rule that's now in existence or the more stricter rule, which would be anticipated by the county, regardless of what you've got, if that goes through and a developer, for instance, because all these step systems will be owned not by our wastewater or by the county, but by the developer. They'll just have regulatory oversight by us, which will be more stricter than the county. Then if they can't comply, they have the ability, and these guys can explain it a little bit more, to just say, okay, we're going to do if we cannot approve it, they can then go to the state and have their system approved. And I'm sure I'm missing a step or two there, but that's what it looks like at this point. Is that close? Close. Okay, so to answer your question, yes, we could put all these tightened regulations because unless you have a really good oversight program like Consolidated does in Murfreesboro, then you got a good chance that these private systems at some point will fail. Now, that still won't be on the county. That'll be on the developer, and it's just like when your septic tank fails, that's on you. Same concept. So that may render this whole thing moot. But two things, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your letting me go because I had 4 ball games I was supposed to see, and I'm headed out to one. And we had discussed this earlier in the week because we had talked about carving that down and our private act and being sure it was regulatory oversight only. We would never have an operational feature to this. And I think correctly so, Mr. Chairman, you made the decision that we need to hold off on that and see how much we do carve down before it actually goes back to the commission. So I'm open if anybody got a question. That's about all I know.
Anybody else have any questions for John T? All right, thank you so much. All right, I would want to make sure that we always have opportunity for our public to make some comments. And so if there is anybody that happens to want to make some comments, please just raise your hand and I'll just, call on you and we'll just come up. Just understand that we are going to follow the same rules as the commission of 3 minutes. And, I'll try to let you know just with a little hand motion that we've hit that point because with the technology, we're not able to put the three minutes up. So, yes, sir. And if you would, when you come up to make a comment, just make sure you hold the button down and speak clearly into the mic.
Thank you. My name is Paul Engel from Unionville. First, I want to thank the Courthouse and Property Committee for taking this rather hot potato. I look forward to learning a lot more than I probably ever wanted to about wastewater systems in the county. But I want to remind the commissioners and everyone else in attendance, it's not the discussion in the room that we're asking to become law. It is the words on paper. And those words, I think, should be right. Now, I don't have a vote, but in order for me to support this resolution, there are really only 2 questions that need to be answered at this point. One is, why do we actually need a wastewater authority? And 2, how is the authority described in the supplemental resolution going to answer question number 1 sufficiently? I think if we do that, we can move on and get the buy-in not just from the commissioners, but from the people of Bedford County. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Stephen Jordan, and I'm in the Wheel part of Bedford County. I have some questions for the committee or the commissioners here. And one of the main concerns that I have is, like the gentleman behind me, what do we need with a wastewater authority? The Bedford County residents, including myself, we've had 3 tax raises on our properties. And, you know, I remember hearing that we weren't going to have another raise on our tax properties, and we got one anyway. Part of a wastewater authority, and from what I'm gathering here, is a sewer system. Now, that's great. That would work fine, but we're not Murfreesboro. And as I've said, we've already been taxed to death. As American citizens, we've all felt the pain the previous 4 years. And, you know, I just feel like that, you know, the people I've talked with 25 people, and I'm going to talk to more. You know, there's a lot of discussion, you know, and you know, I speak for the ones that I've spoke to. I got up here at the last meeting. You know, the people, they don't want this. And there's not been enough information that's been given. There's no mailers. There's no anything. All we know is that we're looking at this being voted upon, and there's very little information other than tonight and, of course, you know, the 10th of February. So, I mean, you know, a lot of people are disgusted. You know, I don't understand why we need to ram this stuff through. I mean, it's a little bit like, well, let's pass this right now and then we'll discuss what's in it later. So, you know, with all the commissioners in good conscience, for the residents of Bedford County, I know there's some that are not going to vote for this tonight, but I'm going to ask all the rest of you, and I'll look at all of you. In clear conscience, can you vote to spend the taxpayers' money on something that they know very little about? I mean, I'd be worried about, you know, people getting organized and primarying you because they don't want what you ram down their throats. And, you know, I'm all for expansion and doing things that are to better Bedford County. I mean, nobody wants to stand in the way of progress, but you need to include we the people when you do these kind of things. And that's all I have. Thank you for letting me come up here and speak.
Yes, sir, thank you. Anybody else have a comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Reford, and I usually get flustered, so I try to take my notes with me. I don't understand a whole lot about wastewater, except that my septic tank in the line at my house just broke, and I got it fixed. But I feel like there are a lot of questions around this topic about the financing. It sounded like it wouldn't be taxpayer money, but then it also sounded like whoever is the governing entity can then raise the prices endlessly, knowing that the people that depend on that wastewater system have no other choice. They have to pay for it because they have to use that service. That, to me, is a big concern. The other red flags, to me, are, for one, the commissioner bringing it to our attention. From the few years that I've lived here, I've learned that his interests are not the best for our county and our community. In a lot of decisions, I felt like he voted against what Bedford County people want and need. So that was my first red flag, where I felt like I don't even need to know any more about it just from knowing where it came from. The other thing is that it was said that the board would be appointed by the county government. I guess that would be the county mayor. And again, looking at the zoning committee that is appointed, I see a lot of red flags, how people that I think have a conflict of interest with having their own business in construction and tied to construction now make decisions for zoning. That, to me, is kind of iffy and doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I'm nervous that we would have that same thing happening, that that board is being appointed with the back thought that we want to have more development, more growth, so we're going to take control over wastewater because that affects development in the county. I feel like there's a lot of conflict of interest, so I think there are a lot of questions, and I think a lot more answers need to happen before you can make a good decision that is in the best interest of all of us who live in this county.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Young Dennis. I want to thank all of you for your time and effort that you put into serving this community. It's beyond my understanding sometimes, but I can appreciate it. I started out in pre-law and served at MTSU and did different things along the lines of what you're doing. My understanding from what John T. said is that this is first draft has language in it that's really, it's going to go away instantaneously. And if it's only the authority that the organization is going to have and not going to do any fundraising, anything else that's on that list, then we don't need to have a meeting till the final draft is done, I guess is what I need to say. But thank you, and thank y'all. Thank the rest of my fellow constituents that took the time to be here.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have a comment? Commissioner Thomas.
Commissioner Hooker, help me understand, but I'm not under the impression we're going to get into the sewage business. We're not going to be laying sewer pipes in the ground. We're not going to have a treatment facility. Everybody will still continue to have their septic system, septic lines. That's what I thought this was about, not a sewer plant. And correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm misunderstanding what we're doing here, but my thinking was, and you can call it an authority, a board, whatever, a committee, whatever, was just going to come up and make sure that people who put in high-density subdivisions on a step system do it, I guess, to the county standards, which would be, my thinking would be better than what the state standards are now or equal to. I thought that was what we were doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I misunderstood that. And some of that language was confusing to me in that first draft, and I think y'all are going to clean that up at some point. So if I'm wrong, somebody tell me different in the way I'm thinking. But from what I'm hearing from the people out here, they're all under the impression that we're going to build a sewer plant. I've got no intentions of doing that at all. You will still have your own septic system in your yard. You will maintain it, take care of it, however you choose to do so, and by whatever company. But if you get high-density subdivisions, all these people, if you've got 100 homes in there and they go into a step system, somebody's got to manage that. And how that's done would be that authority or committee or whatever, that would be their rules. I'm not in favor of getting in the sewage business by no means.
Commissioner Thomas, I'm going to answer that in just a second. I want to make sure there's no more public comments, and that way we can close that period. No, that's okay. Anybody else? Are y'all okay with that? Let him have a second comment? Okay. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I'm not really good with names. Thomas, Commissioner Thomas. The draft resolution as it sits, now granted, we have two resolutions. The one requesting permission to create an authority and the draft of what the powers of that authority would be. It specifically states that they will acquire, finance, and operate wastewater systems. That's the language of the proposed resolution. It also has exclusive authority to provide wastewater in the county except where there's already a municipal wastewater system. So while that may not be the intention, that certainly is the language of the resolution as it sits today. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and make sure anybody doesn't have any other comments. Yes, sir. Come on up. Yeah, come on up.
I don't know. Mash here. That sounds like it right there. If we created this and it had its own authority, it was separate from the commission, could it on its own contract with an outside entity to manage itself? I don't know, that kind of concerned me when I read it.
Yeah, so let me address that directly, and then I'll also tie your question in, Commissioner Thomas. If the first page was all we got, you're 100% right. That was just to go for a private act. But unfortunately, we got this. And the rest of this document opens up a lot of questions. And that's where we're at tonight. Because again, we weren't directly asked to do just a study session on simply the first page. We were asked to do a study session on the entire document. So again, talking through the last couple weeks, I have spent talking to multiple utility districts, multiple different experts as it comes to these resolutions, these type of systems. When we get into the authority business, now I won't say the wastewater business because there is two separate pieces to that. It opens up the door to either a government-run system, which obviously this group is not willing to do, but also opens up the opportunity for a private system. And once you go that route, then you have zero control because we're basically handing over 100% authority when it comes to wastewater. Even though we say we're the authority, once we allow a private entity to come in and do that, because at some point our county is going to get large enough to where we will have to look at different types of systems. But the thing is in this current draft, it says that this authority that we create will have that authority to operate, acquire, plan, create a budget, even put in for grants, put in for taxation, things like that. That's in the document. And I know that we have talked about it at this group that we don't want that. The problem is the draft doesn't match what we heard at Rules Committee. And so, again, I wanted to take the opportunity, number one, to specifically talk about the private act, and TDEC will be coming up here in a minute, and we'll have other speakers tonight to talk directly about systems, but also the authority. But more importantly, we need to talk about these systems because if we pass this document in a couple weeks, then the systems are something we need to know about because those are tied to this document. Even though we may not say that it is, the written document says it is. And so again, I agree with you that what we heard in the first day on the Rules Committee was just that we want to create an authority. We want to create an oversight. We want to protect the county. But then we got the document. And so again, I talked to John T. He called the other night to specifically talk about tonight, how this was going to go. And I explained to him that as a single commissioner, I have no authority to do anything with that document. It will need to come in front of this group at the next commission meeting to make edits. And I think that there's some conversations that need to be had, but in the document as it sits, which is what we were presented last month and what we are discussing tonight, puts us in a situation to where what is being told is not what is being written. And so again, either A, we need to make the written part match what we're being told, or again, we need to decide if we need this or not. So I think that's what I had set up for tonight, is to make sure we have a 360-degree view on this, because I'm a paramedic and I am good with the human body, but wastewater systems is not my specialty. And again, I want to make sure that we have a good view, because this is how we should be doing business. Tonight is exactly how this body should be doing on every big resolution that we do. Have study sessions, bring experts, talk about these things. We should slow things down. We should talk about them, because again, we're in the same position as we were on several other items, that we've kind of went faster than we have in our knowledge. And so this is hopefully filling those knowledge. Commissioner Davis.
I'm a little confused here. One of the comments was made by the gentlelady in the back: do we want the growth? Every one of us, majority of us is born here, raised here, and I'm just as concerned about the growth as everyone else. And the infrastructure, I'm concerned about the infrastructure holding up to what we're trying to do. Control the growth in standards, I've heard that several times. The mass building of contractors and developers is, and I need someone to answer this for me, is that what we're trying to do, and to set a standard for the mass builders and the contractors to set a standard? Is that what this step system is for and developed for? Because right now, if we don't have any standards set, someone can come in and put 1,000 homes in with 1,000 septic tanks.
May I speak to that?
Yes, sir.
You're exactly correct. That is exactly what we're trying to do, is when these big out-of-town developers come in here from New Jersey and California, and they put 300 houses, and then they say, oh, it'll perk if we put it on 2 acres of land. And at this point in time, the state, and I'll let them explain the situation, the regulations they have very little recourse. What we are trying to do is set our own standards, and the big developers are not going to like when we put these standards in, because it's going to slow their roll on the number of houses they can put in. So if we want to slow growth, if we want to manage growth, if we want to have some type of control over growth, these large developments are who we're specifically talking about. Now, we have, like Commissioner Thomas said, we're not interested in septic tanks or running lines. We're just making certain that we have a set of standards, and those standards are very high, and the person that comes in there to operate that system meets those standards, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, so that we have clean water and we don't have, I won't take the role away from the state, I'll let them tell it, but that's what we're trying to accomplish, yes.
My question is then, why was that not? It would have been clear for me in layman's terms of going, hey, guys, we want to do this to set a standards because of this mass building is flooding our county.
When we wrote the resolution, the only thing we had to work from was the other resolutions that had passed the state. So we pared some of that wording down. We did not do a complete job, and we should have done a better job. But this is helpful in that we can now work this through so we can specifically target what we're talking about. And if we can find a way to get consensus where we're all comfortable that we know exactly what we're doing, then I think every one of us is in agreement that we need to do something, because we have to slow things down. We can't absorb all of it. To your question, exactly, our infrastructure can't take it, and we need to slow this or manage this in a better way.
Just as a point of order, just if everybody's okay, just because I don't want to end conversation, but a lot of your questions may be answered with the next couple speakers. And so if you would be okay with allowing us to go on to those speakers, and I don't want to cut you off, Commissioner Thomas, but I think maybe some of those questions could be answered and maybe give even better insight than can come from this group. And then that way we can kind of go from there. Yes, so I'm going to call up Mr. Brad Harris with TDEC. I think he has a guest with him. And so if you wouldn't mind just kind of letting me know what his name is to be able to do that.
Sure. My name is Brad Harris. Excuse me, I've lost my voice. I'm the manager for the Land-Based Systems Unit with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Division of Water Resources. And I have Britton Dotson here with me. He's an environmental fellow for the division. The environmental fellow position is our highest level technical position for a division. I appreciate him being here. He drove down here from Sumner County to be with us, so really appreciate that. Bear with me. I'm trying to multitask here and hold this button down at the same time. But anyway, what we were asked to talk about and really has to do with a project that we worked on in January and February of 2024. We went to there's about 420 land application systems that support 374 step systems in the state of Tennessee. And we went to all of them for a couple reasons. One is we really didn't have a good overview of, how are these performing across the state. We didn't have a really good picture of that within a small time frame. They're usually inspected by state inspectors once every 5 years. So at any given time, it's been 4 years since somebody looked at them historically. So that was one reason. The other reason is a lot of communities, we get a lot of questions from other counties. There's a number of counties, small communities. Me and Britton were just in Hamilton County here 3 weeks ago doing the same presentation, that are dealing with or looking at, how their county and their constituents want to address decentralized wastewater. So what we're going to talk about or what I'm planning on talking about, is just the results of that study. We'll kind of talk about what one of these systems looks like, how we designed the study and what we found in the results, and we got some pictures we can show you. So, if I can work with both hands here. Let's see. Okay, a typical land application system, and I forgot to point out, but we're specifically looking at using drip dispersal. Decentralized wastewater, there are a few spray systems in the state, but not very many. Most of them are drip dispersal systems. So this is a typical layout. Most of them support subdivision developments. So this will give you an idea of kind of the components. So at each house, there's a what they call a step tank. I'm going the right direction. Well, I've got a technical difficulty here, guys. What did I do? I see the cursor.
Okay. Up or down? So up will get you to the next slide.
Okay. It should be lighting up some numbers, but it doesn't. Oh, well, there's the one. Okay. Okay. Okay, anyway, if you can see the numbers, so each one of these houses, when we have a decentralized system that serves a subdivision, each house has what they call a step tank, and that stands for septic tank effluent pump. It's just a large tank, like a septic tank, that has the effluent pump in it. Normally they're about 1,500 gallons. It's pumped into a collection line, so all the wastewater is collected, goes through the collection line to a centralized location. Usually there's some equalization, and then there's a secondary treatment device of some kind, secondary treatment unit. A lot of cases it's a recirculating sand filter, but there's some manufactured products that do the same thing. And then once it's treated to secondary levels, it goes to the land application area, and that's the area of suitable soil where the drip disposal line is installed. A couple things I'd point out: secondary treatment is only treating down to normally 45 milligrams per liter BOD. That's what's in the state permits. The need for the secondary treatment primarily is to reduce some of the organic load into wastewater, so you can use drip dispersal, so you can get it out in the disposal field. We didn't really look at the effectiveness of the secondary treatment component, collection system, or the step tanks. All those particular components, whether it's a pump, septic collection line, secondary treatment unit, engineered and can be replaced. The critical portion of one of these decentralized systems is the soil area and how that soil performs. Me and this mouse, I tell you. Here's a picture of drip, something for scale in there, maybe a quarter or something like that, but it's a small diameter poly pipe. It's positioned, it's usually installed with a vibratory plow about 8 inches into the soil profile. Okay, thanks. Okay, that's a lot better, thanks. Every 2 feet along that line, this pipe comes on big rolls. Every 2 feet along the line, you have what you call a pressure compensating emitter, which is basically a little hole. The pressure compensating part is a weir inside that only allows it to emit so much water depending on the, regardless of the pressure. Usually they operate from 7 to 70 PSI. And they emit about a half a gallon per water per emitter when they're pressurized. Now, dosing cycles are not usually an hour long. Most of the time they're 12 to 15 minutes, and they're dosed multiple times during the day, but that's what it does. Typical design, this is important. It's a pretty efficient way of using a suitable soil, and if you look at the state guidelines that are in place at this point, The maximum loading rate is 0.25 gallons per day per square foot. So in layman terms, you could take one acre of suitable soil and dispose of 11,000 gallons of wastewater. That would equate to about 36 homes. So a lot of us are familiar with like a 1 acre lot and a septic system in one house. With these systems, you could have 1 acre of suitable soil and it support 36 different residences. So there's over 400 active decentralized wastewater systems in Tennessee utilizing drip dispersal. They range in size. Most of them are in the 200 to 300 home range, but we do have some that are a few hundred gallons a day up to hundreds of thousands of gallons a day. They're distributed across the state, high density in some counties. I'll show a map here in a minute that has a little dot where they're all located. They primarily support residential developments and resort cabin developments with some schools, churches, and commercial businesses. So a school, for instance, like Community High School, where my son's a senior in Unionville, is on a step system. It's on a drip system. They're commonly owned and operated by local utilities, wastewater authorities, and private utilities governed by the Tennessee Public Utilities Commission. So the word utility is a big word, but there's a couple different types of utilities. You have chartered utilities like the Bedford County Utility District or the Consolidated Utility District. You also have for-profit companies, wastewater companies that go through TPUC and become utility companies, public utility companies. Many are permitted directly to the property owners, like in churches, schools, and commercial establishments. That's kind of a distribution of where they are in the state. You have about 80 systems in Rutherford County alone. When you get up in Wilson, I think you have 45, something like that. But that was as of January 2024. So we went to every one of those locations during the study. So here's kind of an aerial view of a decentralized land application system. You see the square in the middle, that's the secondary treatment unit. That's actually a recirculating sand filter. You can look at the green areas. Hello? Okay. I've been sabotaged here. So, anyway, the green areas represent drip field zones. Now this would be one land application area, but the green areas you can see from the grass. If you were close enough to the screen, you can kind of see the lines in those zones that represent individual drip lines. There's also some area that you see that doesn't have drip installed. Those are reserve area, repair areas. And one thing I wanted to point out in that slide is, these systems are really close to the communities they serve in a lot of cases, either adjacent or within the subdivision. They're developed by the developer will buy a large tract of land, take the suitable soil. Okay. Okay, I can hold it. I got it.
Please.
I mean, we got another 30 minutes. You sure you want to hold that?
I'll wait right here, man.
Okay, all right. Have at it.
He gets paid by the hour. It's okay.
Okay. So anyway, I wanted to point out how close they are to the developments. Normally, a developer will buy a big piece of land, take the suitable soil that's in that property, and use it to its max and build as many homes as they can that it'll support. So the fundamentals of the approach is utilizing the soil's environment to accomplish final treatment of domestic wastewater effluent and providing a medium for return to the hydrologic cycle, primarily through transpiration, evaporation, and percolation, without producing ponding conditions or without overflowing, running on somebody else's property, or failing. So that's kind of a graphic. I don't think you can see it very well, but it just represents the transpiration, evaporation, and then percolation. These drip lines are usually in the ground on 4-foot centers, so you've got one about every 4 foot, 5 foot sometimes. There's some stuff at the bottom I'm sure you can't read, but one of the key points is that, you know, these things have to function around all year. So even when we've had a lot of rain, even in the wintertime, if it's snowing, still got to function. And we're at 0.25 gallons per day. You're adding a lot of water to some of these areas. You know, we hear a number with a decimal, we see a number with a decimal, we don't think it's that big a deal, but we get probably 52, 55 inches of rain here in Bedford County per year. These systems loaded at 0.25 represents another 145 inches of water going on that particular soil every year. To get close to that in a native environment, you would have to go to the mountains in Washington State on the coast, or down to the mountains in Costa Rica or in Hawaii. So our land application area assessment project, the project that we done in January and February, we were just looking at the land application area. We didn't go back and look at the treatment system. We didn't look at the results, review MORs. We didn't look at step tanks. We didn't look at pumps or collection systems. We're primarily looking at that land application area. Again, that's the one component of these systems that you can't manufacture. It was statewide. We done it in January and February. It was standardized observations. Everybody filled out the same intake form and took pictures to support that form. It was 19 staff. We had common project leadership and direction. Me and Britton and a couple other folks met with all these guys. And we went to 420 land application areas supporting about 374 land application systems. So the difference between land application areas and land application systems is that some systems may have more than one area. So you may have one area of soil, one side of the road, and you may have another 2 acres on the other side of the road. So we treated them as individual areas. The vast majority, this is a pretty important part, the vast majority of these land application systems solely rely on the ability, that land application ability. That's one thing that's kind of critical with these. If you have one where your soil area doesn't perform properly, there's not an easy remedy. Either you've got to get the wastewater somewhere else, to a public wastewater plant, or you've got to come up with some more land to be able to work with it. We didn't evaluate the secondary treatment during this project. Land application systems in the project are those that utilize, that's what we talked about a while ago, that utilize drip dispersal in whole or in part. Land application areas are those individual big blocks of land that they're using. Evaluation of compliance during this project was not comprehensive. We didn't look at all the little pieces. We were primarily focused on the land application area. These systems are non-discharging. They're permitted through state operational permits, which don't allow any direct discharge to surface waters or any location where they can enter surface waters. And they don't allow any discharge to groundwater karst features. So this gives you an idea of some of the stuff we saw. So the system on the right is kind of what you would want to see. You can see where the drip lines are installed. That grass is doing well. System on the left is completely hydraulically overloaded. Wastewater standing on the surface, it's ponding. Many of these are in or immediately adjacent to the developments they serve. So all the data we collected, we done with ArcGIS Survey 123, and it's being managed by an ArcGIS dashboard that is publicly facing on our website. So when you see that map that you saw earlier, that was just a picture of that public database. It is public facing. You can get on there and click the dots, and you can look at the report, you can look at the pictures. Each report includes standard observations along with site-specific notes and photographs. The same format for the report were utilized for the follow-up visits we also done as part of this project. During the data assessment stage of this project, we had several distinct performance subpopulations become evident, largely based on the recorded standard observations and aided by the pictures that we produced. So this is going to sound overwhelming, but there were 2 primary subpopulations and basically 7 secondary populations. So why I'm telling you this is that when we designed this study, we didn't go out and want everybody to give them a 1 through 5, or if this is pretty good, or this is not very good, or anything like that. We just gathered all the data, and then we sorted the data into different buckets that made sense, and that's where these populations come from. That probably does scare you to death. It's easier than you think. We have a population that starts with X. If it has an X, that means either some of the wastewater or none of the wastewater was even making it to the land application area. If it starts with A, that means the water was actually making it to the land application area. X1 is easy. It's systems that haven't been built or that have been built and are not yet operational. X2, this is a population of systems. We wasn't really expecting some of this stuff, but X2 is a population of systems where the wastewater is being discharged. It's running out close to where the treatment facility itself is. Here's a picture of one. I don't know how well you can see the picture. This is over in East Tennessee. That's the control building for the decentralized system. The reason the ground is shiny in front of the building is because all the wastewater is running out from under the building. Apparently had been happening for quite a while. Here's another one. This is X2. This is actually in Williamson County. This picture will fool you. You think you're looking uphill, but you're really not. You're looking downhill. If you look in the picture on the right, there's a recirculating sand filter. That's the square part. And the red highlight is where the water's coming out of the side of the recirculating sand filter, and it's running down the hill, across the street, and to the creek. Where we took that picture is where that white star is located, looking down toward the creek. X3 are systems to where the water is getting out to the drip field, but there's some kind of major problem in the land application area. Here's an example. So this one, this obviously probably West Tennessee or East Tennessee. You've had a tree fall over. It's jerked up the force mains for the system. So the system is, when the pumps kick on, it discharges out of that pipe to the extent it's been running down it's created its own water feature. Here's another one. This is a well-maintained system, but they had something pretty, some kind of major problem in the middle of one of their land application areas. You know, you can tell they're losing a lot of wastewater during the pumping cycle. So A1, that's the systems that's getting the water. A1 are the ones we like to see. So there's an example of A1. We didn't find anything wrong with that group. There's another example of A1. A2A are systems that have some kind of minor problem. These things, an acre of drip field, you can have up to 5,000 emitters. So if you've got 5,000 of anything, you may have 1 or 2 that are not working properly. But it just represents minor problems. Here's some examples. The rest of this drip field looks pretty good, but we've got a little pool of water here. That could be a groundhog, could be failed emitter. Here's another one. They've knocked this control valve control box off of where it's supposed to be with a tractor, apparently. A2B is a different story. A2B is a pretty egregious condition. That's where we have water getting to the disposal field, but it's just hydraulically overloaded. Here's an example. This system is completely hydraulically overloaded. It's failing and it's running off the site. Picture was taken there where the star is. Dot on the right is the recirculating center, is the treatment system, and the dot on the left by the star is the disposal field. Here's another one. You know, the drip lines in this drip field are running parallel with that fence. However, there's something major going wrong with this particular land application area to the extent it's made its own path, and so the wastewater is running down this water feature under the fence onto somebody else's property. This is pretty rough. I don't know how well you can see the picture, but this whole disposal field was just absolutely underwater. And you can see the proximity to the house, and there's no fence. I mean, you need to really be careful where to throw the Frisbee if that's, if you live there. And so there's where the picture was taken. It's taken right there at the corner. And this wastewater that's surfacing is going through that culvert, and it's running on down through the subdivision. Let's go back to this one. We started out with this one to give you an idea of what some of these look like. This would actually be an A2B. If you see the dark spot up there on the left, that's where that zone is probably, it's got a bad zone valve or something that's being dosed too much. It's failing, it's running down toward the house. And in A3, you know, they're just too grown up. They hadn't been taken care of. They're not been managed in a way we can even get out there and see what's going on. In our state permits, there's a requirement to inspect these systems once every 14 days. That's certainly more than 14 days worth of growth on that gate. I think actually when we went to that site, the certified operator didn't even know where the system was. So anyway, now we'll get into the results, what we saw in the study, since you kind of know the categories. We consider A2 like the one where everything's running out from under the control building. Systems like A3 where you've got like where the pipes were jerked out of the ground in the disposed land application area. And also A2B where the land application area was completely hydraulically overloaded as being major problems. So when we talk about minor, major, that's your major categories. So here's the results of our systems. We had basically about half across the state didn't show any signs of noncompliance. We had about 25% that showed some minor noncompliance, the A2A population. And then we had 25% that have some kind of major problem, like some of the pictures that you've seen here today. It represents quite a few systems. Tennessee has more of these systems than any state I'm aware of. So that 25% is 94 systems across the state have had some kind of major problem when we've done this survey. So this is confusing, but this is just the land application areas and how they come out. Instead of talking about systems, if you're talking about the 420 areas, it's relatively close to the same numbers. You've got about a little over half that we didn't find a problem with, about a quarter with some minor problems, 16% with major problems, and 4% that we just couldn't, they were too overgrown for us to get there. General summary of the report. There's over 40 systems that conditions indicating the land application area was not being utilized. Approximately 16% of the land application areas had some major problems. Some of them may be able to find remedy through better operation and maintenance. Some of them, they'll require additional property or somebody to extend public sewer to serve those homes. Approximately 25% of land application areas exhibited conditions of some kind of local saturation or ponding. That would be the minor violations. And then over 1/2 of the land application systems were in compliance when we went out there. 94 systems. So we didn't intend the study to be an enforcement action, but sometimes you can't unsee anything. So after we went out there the first time, we identified those 94 that I told you were major issues, and we sent them an email, said, hey, we completed our study, you got some serious problems, we're coming back and re-inspecting these systems. And so they had a month or so to really, you need to get, we told them you need to get them fixed. We got a big problem. So when we done our re-inspections, 29% did return to compliance, 29% of those 94 systems. About 1/2 of them did not. Some were a little bit better. Some were even worse than they were the first time we were there. About 21%, it was towards the summer when we done our re-inspection. So you had some schools and things like that were out of session, so they really didn't tell us anything. They were undetermined. And then you had some that they had let them grow up to where you couldn't get out there and really see what was going on, which is a non-compliant condition itself. But looking forward, these systems can be a tool in Tennessee's wastewater toolbox. You've got Consolidated Utility District over in the next county. They have an excellent program. They operate about 80 of these and serve 9,200 and something different households in Rutherford County. Keys to success of the systems include accurate soil maps, conservative design standards, and detailed complete construction. I mean, you would be amazed. We went to some that was supposed to have a 5-acre drip field, and somehow they'd only installed 2 acres. We had a couple where they had lagoons as the primary treatment and then going to a drip field, and they've never even installed the drip field. So, one thing I would mention, I know y'all are trying to make decisions, but one thing you need to understand from the state, or I think it's important that you know, is that, you know, a question I would ask if I didn't know anything about this, I would be like, well, you know what these problems are. Why not change your regulations and have accurate soil maps? Why not change your regulations and have conservative design? Why not change your regulations and require better operation and maintenance? And the fact is, we really don't have promulgated regulations that talk about minimum design and construction standards. We have a guidance document. We've recognized this for a long time. We started an effort, me and Britton probably have hundreds of hours in it. Back in 2016, 2017, we started a rulemaking effort to try to get some rule regulations in place that were binding, that would govern how these things are built and put some more conservative standards in place. And we haven't been able to accomplish that, guys. So when you think about how involved you want to be locally or whatever, just keep in mind that we do our best, but there's limitations of what the state can require and what we can enforce. The pros of these systems is that, it's the same thing as public sewer. It allows a very higher density of development, commercial. Some places are looking for that. Reduces reliance on discharge permits and associated pollutant loads going to surface waters. Rutherford County is a good example of that. The Stones River, small river, is kind of limited. Reduces costs relating to expanding public sewer. These things are a lot cheaper than what it would be. They're a lot less maintenance than operating an MPDES facility, a discharge facility. And normally the capital costs are incurred directly by the developer. So in most cases, the developer is building the system to whatever specs, and then whatever operating utilities taking it over comes and inspects it, and if it meets their criteria, they take it over. Cons, I'm not going to read all that, but they're really reliant on the soil profile. You really don't need to mess up the soils. And you need to have the best soils information you can get to make sure. I mean, these things have to work in perpetuity. It ain't like we're going to do away with a house in 25 years. You need really good soils information, and you need to think worst case scenarios sometimes. One of the things we tried to get through in our regulatory proposal was duplicate area, a reserve area. If you have to go in and add a zone or you have to fix it, if you don't have the soil available, chances are by the time you need to do that, you're not going to be able to buy it. It already has a house on it somewhere. So operation and maintenance is not really tied to the size of the system. Even the small ones and the large ones still require quite a bit of operation and maintenance. And another consideration or con is the cost of corrections. Like I say, there's not many good alternatives if one of these things goes bad. I mean, you either got to have other land or you got to get to public sewer. And it's going to be hard to move 250 people out of a house, out of their home or out of a subdivision, so. You might have a question is why do engineers push on this 0.25, or why do they push it to the limit? And it's very simple. They're building the system. They're developing a piece of property. The state will allow a maximum of 0.25, and so that's what we see in a lot of cases. If engineer A You know, he tells the developer he can get 72 homes. Engineer B says, hey, this soil it's got some clay in it. It's got some clay profiles. We can't load it but about a 0.1. I mean, you can see the difference it makes. These are small numbers, but they amount to a lot. Engineer B is not going to get very much work in the future. That's all I got. Britton's here. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have of us if we can.
All right, I do have one question, just to start us off.
Sure.
All right, in this document, it was talking about eminent domain, and so I reached out to several utility districts. So we've had many questions about why eminent domain is included in this authority documents and other documents throughout the state. When a system fails and immediate repairs are not possible, as a developer or system manager, you are required to acquire adjacent property in order to reinstall or create a new drip system. In many cases, this adjacent property may be located some distance away due to other developments or homeowners on adjacent properties not wanting to sell. In such situation, eminent domain becomes necessary as you may need to transport wastewater from the original development to a newly acquired property, which sometimes involves requiring nearby homeowners to allow those pipes to cross their land through the use of eminent domain. Is that correct statement as it comes to if there is a catastrophic failure where it cannot be repaired, it is this land application area? Can you kind of go into that as to why eminent domain would be included in some of these documents?
I can't speak legally to eminent domain. I'm an engineer, not an attorney. The situations I've seen where they've had to add some additional land, I haven't seen where well, I can't even say it. I haven't seen where that comes into play. The case I'm thinking about, they bought some additional property at an auction down the road, and they run another line to it. So I don't know what to tell you. I would talk to the county attorney on that. So.
All right, any other commissioners? Commissioner Maddox.
Sir, first of all, I appreciate you being here tonight. I know you're spending your Friday evening with us, no better place, right? I appreciate it. So in your report, which was very thorough, I noticed in one illustration that you had an area identified as a reserve repair area. So can you describe a little bit to me what that reserve repair area would mean?
Reserve area, what we had recommended in our rule proposal was a 50% reserve area. So if you were trying to put together a development and you needed 2 acres of suitable soil to handle the daily wastewater flow, we would have asked that you also provide another acre of suitable soil so in the future, if there's a need to repair it or add a zone, that land is available. There's some other counties that look into that a little bit. I think Williamson County requires 100%. Consolidated Utility District requires 50%. I think Sevier County now requires 100% through their planning and zoning, but the state doesn't have that requirement.
So in order for this system to work, one of the main components of this is simply the soil, correct?
It's the most important, yes, sir.
So if we have a situation where the reserve repair area is constrained or overrun, and we have 36 houses, what happens at the point when that area is overrun with wastewater and there's no other area to make the repair?
The cases I'm familiar with, they've extended public sewer, found a way to get public sewer to it. And that's a consideration. That's something actually that the Hamilton Water and Wastewater Authority thinks about. They don't want to get too far from where sewer is, even if they take on one of these projects, because.
So would you agree that if we have a development, say, far outside of a reach of a city sewer system, and one of these systems go bad and we have no area to expand to, what's the next protocol from a state level?
Whoever the utility is, whoever the permittee is responsible. So what happens in that process, would depend on it. But there would be an expectation that they either find some additional land or they figure out what to do with that wastewater, So.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Chairman, yield back.
Go Commissioner Thomas, then I'll get you, John.
Just two quick questions. Do you find the current state regulations acceptable?
I do not.
My next question, does a county authority have to be established to create more stringent standards?
There are three ways that I'm aware of that counties have dealt with when they have wanted to have more local control of the design standards, how they're operated, maintained, or where they're going, or, you know, that type of thing. The three mechanisms I'm aware of, one is through a utility district. That's how Consolidated did. I think their county commission back in the 90s, 97 or something, passed a resolution requiring any public sewer in the county be provided by Consolidated Utility District, and it supported their charter to add wastewater to their charter. They only had a charter for water. So some handle it through utility districts. Others have formed a water and wastewater authority, like Wilson County, Dixon County, and I think Hamilton County. Some have had more stringent regulations and some don't. I think Hamilton County does at this point. The third way is through planning and zoning. So Williamson County handles it somehow through their planning and zoning. They have a pretty, you would have to reach out to Williamson County Planning and Zoning to completely understand it, because I don't. But there's certain lot sizes for certain developments. They can still use decentralized systems, but it might not reduce the size of the lot that they have to have for that particular development. They also Williamson County requires 100% reserve area. So in the example me and you talked about, if they needed 2 acres, then that developer has to provide 4. So there's 2 acres to fix it at some point in the future. Sevier County has 100%. But anyway, those are the three mechanisms, either through utility district, Water and Wastewater Authority, or something through planning and zoning are the ones I'm familiar with. So, sure.
Commissioner Boutwell.
Thank you for being here. If I have a development, if I own a development and I have a failed system, what remedy can the state make me do?
Fix it.
And how would you do that?
That would be up to whatever utility owned it. So if it's a public sewerage system, so the developers don't own these. They're owned by either those private wastewater companies that have gone through TPUC and become utilities, or they're owned by, you know, a utility district. So the utility would be responsible to figure out what's in the best interest. You build them on your own?
Commissioner Boutwell, use your mic if you don't mind.
Let's say I built this thing on my own. I didn't go through a utility.
You talking about the service subdivision?
Yeah.
You're in a lot more trouble than I could speak to.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
But I picked up when you talked about you went back and you found some that were not compliant, even though you said you got to get in compliance. What happened with them?
So that critical group that when we done the follow-up inspections that were still out of compliance, we've sent notice of violation to all those facilities. At this point, we've recommended a number of them to director's orders, which is the next step in the enforcement process with TDEC. And so some of them are in that realm at this point.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you had tried to get you've got a set of guidelines as opposed to you want to get some rulemaking. What will rules do? If you could get additional rules, what are you talking about accomplishing?
It makes them enforceable. So we have a design criteria. And of course, me and Britton over the last 15 years have had a lot of legal challenges dealing with some of these things. And when you get into a legal setting, you know, design criteria is just a guidance document. It's something the department says, well, you should design them like this, but when you try to enforce it, you really don't have any ability to do that. If you promulgate regulations and you put design standards into regulations and you go through public hearings like we did, like y'all are doing tonight, at the end result, when you get those in place, then it's something that's enforceable.
So while you're saying you can enforce to a degree, we would be better off with some definitive regulations.
The state's regulations, I mean, we recognize that our guidance is not, I mean, it's not a good system. We would really like to have regulations, and we put a lot of effort into trying to get there, and we wasn't able to pull it off politically. We still have authority when it comes to pollution of waters, systems that are failing. We still have authority when it comes to operational stuff. But really, to have a successful program, you need some kind of standards somehow, you know, that are responsible. We have some really good examples in the state of Tennessee of good systems and good standards. Consolidated standards are a lot more conservative than what's in the state guidance. If you look at them as a utility, their maximum loading rate's 0.15, where the state has 0.25. They got 50% duplicate area where the state doesn't have any. I mean, it's a big difference.
I guess what standards could be is more preventative. If things are built to a certain standard, that should diminish the probability that they're going to fail.
Yes, sir, I would agree with that.
Commissioner Epperson?
Am I correct in, so the state says that we have to allow step systems in our county? Is that correct? I mean, or can we just say we're not going to allow any step systems? We're going to keep the 1 acre and septic tank?
I can't speak to that. There's certainly, I'm not aware of us saying you have to do something, but that would be a good question on the attorney level and the legal level. Can you actually ban something that's regulated by the Water Quality Control Act? I don't know. I would be happy to provide the county attorney with some contact information to some of our attorneys. They deal with the Water Quality Control Act all the time, so they would probably be more knowledgeable than me.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have a question? Yeah, Commissioner Vick.
Follow up with Commissioner Epperson's question. If we did ban these systems, we couldn't operate our county school system because they are outside of the city, outside of the sewer area. So we would have to stop any construction at Liberty. We'd have to stop construction at any new school out in that area because we couldn't put a step system in because there's no sewer available. And incidentally, the county, there's 5 step systems working in this county right now, and county government owns 3. The state fire code academy has 1, and then we have 1 system up on 231. And based on the numbers we just saw, with 1 out of 4 failing, our number is pretty well secured that we're going to have one of those in a failing situation.
Could you not grandfather in the ones that's already there and say no more in the future?
I'd probably feel more comfortable with John T. to make sure we can kind of go through that with him from the legal standpoint, just because we don't have that legal expert here. But I definitely think that's a question we need to talk about, you know, as we're talking through these systems, because that was one of the things I did was when you sent me your presentation, I went through it, and we're talking, this is just the 400 you looked at. There's additional systems above and beyond that, correct?
No, that's all of them. There's 420 land application areas, and there's 374 systems. That was of January 2024. So there's been more permitted since that period of time.
And so we're talking about a 50% chance that, you know, they're going to have at least minor or major issues, and then 26% that is having major issues. So some of the things that you pointed out, hydraulic overload was something that you mentioned, and 16% of these failures actually reached drinking water or some form of waterway, streams, wells, things like that. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure I read that in your document.
The 16% was the land application areas that we had in the egregious category. So not necessarily running into waters, but could be running on the neighboring property or failing.
All right, and I did have one question. I spoke to a couple utility districts that had the same comment, basically that to have this authority created and to be successful, and I made sure to be very specific that we did not want to be in the system business, we wanted to be in the authority business. And they said, well, unfortunately, when you get into any type of wastewater business, you're in the wastewater business, whether you're in a system or just an authority. And so they said, because of that, you have to have experts on staff that actually understands how these systems operate to make sure that our county holds them accountable, that they're actually meeting the standards. So they said that they recommended having a engineer on staff, having a soil scientist on staff, and that most of the large systems had those, and that because most planning entities or things like that are not experts in soil management, because as I'm learning through this process, that everything comes back to the soil and the maintenance of the system. And so if you don't have those engineers on site or on staff and those soil scientists, you're really relying on them to make those decisions of, these engineers that they're paying to make their decisions for them. So again, is that something that you think as well? But again, those recommendations came from currently relatively similar systems to what we would be looking for.
Yeah, the only utility I'm familiar with that has a soil scientist is Consolidated. They have a staff soil scientist. But yeah, I mean, a lot of utilities can, they'll hire somebody, hire a firm. I mean, I think that's what Consolidated did early on, is they hired an engineering firm, that they employed to review plans when they got a proposal in. So I think it can be done by contract basis, but yeah, if you have more stringent standards, you certainly need somebody that knows what they're doing to look at it. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Davis.
So if the state standards are lacking or weak, I don't know the terminology used, if we don't do this, we have to accept the state standards.
There's not any, again, there's three different mechanisms, that I've seen in other counties that people have used, and that's been planning and zoning, utility district, or water and wastewater authority. But if there's not a higher local standard, there is no other standard than what we have at the state.
Commissioner Boutwell.
Okay, and so in your opinion, is the state standard adequate?
No, sir, it's not. We recognize that. That's when we tried to go through the regulatory process back in 2017. So.
All right, Commissioner Maddox.
So to follow up to Commissioner Batwell's question, are there any plans in place to upgrade your policies to ensure that your standards are higher?
Yeah, if we can get some kind of opportunity to do that. We've worked with the University of Tennessee on a contract. So when we had to give up on our rule process before, we were pretty far down the path of getting the rules. We had them presented to the Board of Water Quality, Oil and Gas, and then legislatively we were asked to remove them from the board's consideration. So we did. And at that point, the legislature also recommended that we form a committee of different, entities and take another look at the rules, which we had really done a lot of that already in the front end, but UT was somebody that they mentioned specifically. So we entered a contract with the University of Tennessee to study these systems around the country and hopefully provide us with a recommended best practices that we could maybe used to help support the rulemaking effort. Since that time with the building in Tennessee, UT got really behind on this contractor training thing or whatever they've got going, and they wasn't able to fulfill that contract. So we're back in conversations with UT again about another contract, but that's kind of where we are. Even if we have them, I'm not sure. The recommendations we need to make are going to have some negative impact on developers. I mean, not huge, but it'll be negative. I'm not sure it's a very good environment to be able to do anything like that at the state level, but we'll see.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up to that, what are some of the negative impacts that you feel that some of your proposals will have on the developers?
We would certainly expect to have some type of reserve area, so it's going to take more land. We would certainly expect to reduce loading rates in a lot of different soils. Again, that would take more land, limit the amount of homes somebody could use. We would look at operation and maintenance, and probably look at the effective emitter spacing. You know, they're putting these things on 5-foot centers sometimes. It really makes no mathematical sense how you have even distribution, but there's a number of things, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
All right, anybody else have? Commissioner Yaki?
I just wanted to try to answer the man from Unionville, and I'm glad Joe came back. I won't ask where you've gone, Joe, but how all this started, it did just not drop out of the sky one night, and somebody decided to send it to the committee to decide what to do. Planning and zoning has been hammered for the last several years, you know, do something about these step systems. We don't need these step systems. We need to ban these step systems. And so coming from the Planning Commission came this is one thing, a waste authority, that could happen in your county. As TDEC has said, you could also have a utility district. That's not going to happen. If planning and zoning took it on, and this may come back to what Drew said, if planning and zoning and we did everything through zoning, I guarantee you we'd have to have a soil scientist, an engineer, clerical help, and all kinds of stuff added to the budget. And that would definitely be a burden on the taxpayer because our planning staff is not equipped to do that. And then the last thing is the authority. So to answer Joe and the other gentleman's question, the legislature is going to adjourn before long. And so what was sent to the committee was what all these other counties have sent in to the state, strictly to ask that our county could have a wastewater authority. It did not set the authority, it did not set the bid board, it did not set the committee. But that way, if the state legislature said we could do it, which encompassed all those things that were listed on that, then that is one option that we could have, and we'd have it in our back pocket, is as we go through and study this, that we could use to supervise these things, because as TDEC has shown, 50% of them fail. And as a county, I don't feel like we can do that, so we're back to the three. Utility district, which is a no. The authority, which is a maybe. Planning and zoning, I wouldn't recommend, because it's going to cost the county a whole bunch of money. And with that authority, and Commissioner Vick can correct me if I'm wrong on that, that authority then can contract with somebody like Consolidated Utility Districts in Rutherford County to help with this so that the taxpayer doesn't have to spend the money. Anita's question on just don't take any zoning. No, we're not going to, zoning's not going to allow step systems. Well, if I were a developer or a realtor, I'd kind of go, whoa, wait a minute here on that one. If I were Dr. Garrett and the Board of Education, I'd go, how am I going to build a new school, and what am I going to do about Liberty? The others, yes, they'd probably be grandfathered in. And the you just get into complications with that, and I don't know that since the state allows step systems, that we can say, no, we're not going to do those at all. I think that could definitely be challenged. So, but to Joe and the other gentleman, what we started out with was just to go to the state, ask them if we could do this. If they said yes, then that would be one of the options that we could have as we move through the decisions. So nothing's been done. We don't have anything in our back pocket to do anything with right now. And if the legislature, gets through this session, we're into another year or so of waiting. But I just, especially Joe, because he's in my district, I want him to understand that all we were doing was asking the state to allow us to do this if we wanted to do it. And then when we decided if we wanted to use an authority, this body would appoint those members who I hope would have credentials and everything else and set up to do this for us. Joe, does that clarify what's happened?
Commissioner Thomas.
If I could ask Linda a question, so if we were to ask the state legislators to allow us to form this authority, and they blessed it, it would have to come back to this commission for us to vote on whether or not we do an authority or not. We would have that as an option. We could vote it up or down, and then we could decide the rules and regulations on how they operate. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that last part because the authority would set up their bylaws, is my understanding, and
But if they set up rules and regulation bylaws, would it have to be approved by us? I'm getting one yes and one no.
Hold on, let me get this, because I have spoke with our expert that talked earlier, and I specifically asked that question. No, we do not have authority over that group. It's just like planning, just like the other groups, BZA, all those. If once we approve this, or, I mean, if we get to that point where we approve this and that we create this board, they're on their own. That we have no more control over them. We can't say, hey, we want it 0.1 versus 0.5. We can't say any of that. We are handing over financial, we are handing over regulatory authority to them. They are an independent board separate of this particular body.
But if we elect those people to serve on that board, then we say, this is what we expect of you, correct?
But that, just like planning with the subdivision rules, we can ask it all day long, but they have to approve it.
But don't those rules have to come back for us to be approved? County Commission, the zoning?
No.
It doesn't? Okay.
Yeah, and that was a big reason why I wanted MTAS here, because it's very important that we understand that. We're relinquishing all authority once this is created. And so that's where the question, and I'm excited that Mr. Harris was here to talk about that third option of planning and zoning, because then we do retain some authority over that, because now planning and zoning, they do work for this commission through regulatory ability. And so again, I just want to, look at this as many options rather than rushing to get this to the legislation. Maybe we need to look at how Williamson County is doing it, because I watched extensive, these gentlemen were in July, were in Williamson County talking about this specific thing, and they took on a lot of these and changed their regulations. And again, that might be a better option because we retain some authority over that, specifically from the financial side, but more importantly on the regulatory side.
But in that, it's like I stated in the very beginning, if we ask the state to approve or to allow us to have this authority and they approve it, then it comes right back to us to decide what to do with it from that point on, correct?
As far as I understand, that John T. said that this would go to the state. If they approve it, then it would come back for us and require a 2/3 vote to implement any authority.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Yockey.
One thing, Commissioner Hooker, I hate authority. I hate anybody telling me what to do. But you have authorities, and I'm not pushing authority. I'm just saying this is one of our options. But when you as a county can't deliver whatever it is that you want, such as Bedford County Utility District, they are now the authority of the water for the county because the county blessed them to be able to do that. And yeah, now they're on their own because the county to be able to run water lines and operate a thing is prohibitive. The same thing with any other authority. They're usually done because the governmental body itself can't provide those services. So yeah, you're giving up authority, but you're also got to trust these people to do. And if I understand right, this governmental body does nominate and board replacements and so forth and so on. But the point I'm trying to get to is, this is big. This is a big, big, big decision. And I'm glad we're talking about it. But it came from zoning, yes, because we've been asked to do something. Well, this is one of those things. We knew one or two of the others were out of our range or it couldn't happen. So that's where all this came from. But at what point can the county take on something that is humongous, I feel, and if planning and zoning done, and I'm really interested in looking in Williamson County's thing, and Chris may have already done it, but it's going to cost because engineer, soil scientists, inspectors, and the list goes on that then the county would have to fund.
All right, Commissioner Boutwell.
Well, you know, you say the county would fund. I'm just thinking out of the box here. A developer comes in, wants to build a 100-home development. And we could say, okay, Mr. Developer, you know, present your plans, and there's going to be a fee associated with that, and that fee would take care of all of the cost associated with, does that meet our standards or not?
I think that's a good point. All right. Any last questions for Mr. Harris? Go ahead, Commissioner Maddox.
Mr. Harris, again, thank you for being here tonight and being patient with us. So you talked a little bit about, well, I asked the question, you know, what are some of the things that you all are looking to correct in order to make the regulations a little more stringent, to maybe meet higher standards? And you did mention some, and then you mentioned that there's several more, but we didn't get into that. So I guess my question is, just very explicitly, if the state were to correct the issues that you're thinking about as the number one expert here tonight, if the state were to correct those issues, the ones mentioned and those unmentioned, would there be a great need for what this body is discussing tonight if the state's regulations were on par?
From a technical standpoint, if we had the great regulations at the state level, no, sir, probably not.
So again, just to clarify, if the state was on par, there would be no reason for us to have these discussions.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Of course, I work in the technical side, so I focus on the technical standards and that type of thing. So I'm not sure what role the Water and Wastewater Authority has in planning or some of those things. So there may be other functions for Water and Wastewater Authority that I'm just don't know what they are. But as far as the regulatory side, if the state had proper regulations, no, you shouldn't have to form this just to protect yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Commissioner Thomas.
One question I have, how long have y'all been working on trying to get these standards changed?
Our formal rulemaking effort was in 2017, so we tried to update some design criteria stuff prior to that.
And I know I know how politics operates. So what is your thinking with the rule changes that you're trying to implement? What's the possibility of them getting passed in the next 5 years?
I think they're very low, to be just completely honest with you.
Mr. Chairman, a follow-up. What are some of the, why that? Why would it be low, just in all seriousness? Is it lobbyists? Is it, why would it be low?
Well, I mean, we went through a pretty robust effort with support from the board last time, and we had the legislature take some exception to it pretty quickly. I don't expect a different result were we to try to approach it again next week. I mean, I just don't. You're doing things that would negatively impact developers, and I think at the state level that train is running, and it's running the other direction.
Thank you for the transparency, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harris, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come talk to us, as well as your colleague for coming all the way down from Sumner County to be with us tonight. I really appreciate your time, and we look forward to maybe, if this moves forward, to maybe bringing you back down for some more information.
Hopefully not on Friday night. So I appreciate it. Good to see y'all.
All right. Our next speaker is going to be Mr. John Freeman. He's an engineer with Shelbyville Power and Water. Mr. Freeman, if you want to, I mean, you're welcome to make a brief statement, or we can go straight into questions, however you want to handle it. Yeah, just hold that push button down there.
Okay.
Anybody got any questions for Mr. Harris? Or correction, Mr. Freeman? All right, I have one. These systems rely on several factors to be successful, including soil quality, maintenance, and upkeep, as well as the potential failure of various parts within these systems. With much of our county being rocky and featuring numerous water sources, including springs, wells, and other bodies of water that where citizens obtain drinking water in some cases. Can you explain some of the challenges that these systems face in our type of terrain here in Bedford County?
Yeah, so the number one problem we have in this county, and if anybody's got a farm or farming, we have to put a lot of lime on our ground. The reason for those purposes is because we got underlying bedrock. Due to that underlying bedrock, we have a lot of karst topography, which means sinkholes. Water typically migrates along that rock surface. And typically above that, we have a stratosphere of clay layer above it. And in most of our county, we have a very thin topsoil layer. So the gentleman that was from Wheel here, I can tell you right now, I live out there. I got rock all the way from the surface down to 3 feet down, and then it's solid. Unionville is a lot of areas like that. Unless you're around areas that are focused around the river, there are deeper pockets of soil around those areas. That's typically where you see our prime farmland. You don't have to add as much lime, just add a little fertilizer and the crops grow better. The reason a lot of these septic systems are failing is because of overloading rate. So the only true way to stop the overloading is decrease the density. Decreasing density reduces your loading rate, or you increase your loading zone of the area that you're dedicating. And I know he was discussing, and y'all heard him talk about consolidated over there. 50%, 100%, what's wrong with 200%? If this is going to be something that's going to be in place 500, 1,000 years and always going to be needed, why do you want to sacrifice or bind yourself to some little point and say somebody's going to have to go out here and buy something later? Get what you need up front, set a lot more stringent regulations, set your loading rates a lot different, set your soil criteria a lot different. In Bedford County, you may have a pocket and you may got to drive 5 miles to get to a soil area that's adequate for that, and that's fine. Just make sure you're getting the best of what you're getting.
Anybody else have a question for Mr. Freeman? All right, I have one follow. I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Freeman, basically what I just heard you say, reduce the input. So you're talking about reducing the number of houses in subdivision, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, you spoke of that, you know, our top areas to build these in are our prime farmland. And so really with allowing step systems, we're encouraging developers to come in and snatch up our quality farmland. Is that correct?
Same as it did in Murfreesboro. So I would like to go into, I heard from a couple people talking a little bit ago. It seems like to me that what y'all are looking for a solution is for PUDs. Y'all are having these people propose these high density developments. And I think y'all took it the wrong way from what the state man said when he said go to planning and zoning. With proper planning and proper zoning, things can be set in place to not allow high density developments. Nobody ever said you had to allow a PUD. You can allow a house per acre. You can allow a house per 5 acres. You can allow whatever y'all dictate. Y'all are the ones setting the precedents. These high density developments, we have a lot of roads, and I don't know if anybody knows where Bobby Dodd Hicks Road is, but if we had more than 20 houses on that road is overloaded now. It don't need any. So there's lots of roads in this county that you don't need high density PUDs. So you got to make sure your infrastructure's there or you don't even need to consider it. And most of these roads aren't wide enough to handle the capacity of a high density development. So back off. There's your justification. We don't have the roads. We don't have the water. all of those high-density developments, and I'm just going to give you a small example. You have ISO ratings from your fire department. If you put too many houses too close together, Bedford County Utility District will tell you they cannot provide fire protection. 40% of your ISO calculation comes from your live on woodland, and I provide the water there, and I can give you fire protection. If you have 1,000 gallons a minute, you could reduce your houses to less than 30 feet apart. They can't even guarantee 500. So there dictates a lot larger, wider house separations. You got your justification for not having PUDs right there, right off the bat. So you just need to write your ordinances and your subdivision regulations to accommodate the growth and the house separation that y'all want. And then these step systems go by the wayside.
All right. Any other commissioners have a follow-up? All right. Any other statements, Mr. Freeman? Or all right. Thank you so much for your time. All right. I want to give one last call to all the rest of the commissioners that are not on the committee. If you want to say anything before we kind of go into some small deliberation before we make a recommendation. Does anybody have anything they want to say? All right. Yes, Commissioner Boutwell.
Well, I would just like to echo that I'm in agreement with a lot of what's been said. I don't think we need a county wastewater system with a plant and sewer line. And I think the best option for our county is 1 acre of perkable land and 1 septic tank and 1 house. That's the ideal situation. But we have school systems that have the step system or the drip system. And we're going to probably have to expand some schools somewhere down the line and install more drip systems for those schools, because they're far out in the county, like Liberty. So I don't know if we can ban step systems. We probably get into a legal situation. I don't have the answer to that. But the county's going to have to employ some additional step systems somewhere down the line just for schools. And if done correctly, they work well. I think the school in Unionville, particularly where the elementary is, they've had a drip system for probably over 50 years, and it's worked okay. And so if done correctly, they're fine. I think what we come back to are the standards, as the gentleman from the state talked about. They don't have the standards. And if we can just get on the front end when these systems come being developed and they're done correctly, then I think a lot of the problems will go away. We can contract out with the engineering services. We don't have to have the people on staff. So whether you want to call it an authority or you want to call it a board or whatever you want to call it, I think we just need some entity to provide some guidance, some regulation, some oversight. And of course, it's not like they're going to be coming one every week. It's probably going to be one every year or two. But one every year or two over a period of time will add up. And if they fail, we're going to have some real issues here in the county. And I think we need to protect our citizens from situations that we know that are likely to happen. I sort of view this as more like, not to be trivial, but I'm sort of viewing it more like a beer board. We give them a set of regulations, and then the applicants come. Applicants might pay a fee, and then we go through, and they check off through the criteria, and if they meet the criteria, then they get the permit to build. So, if that may be a little simplistic, but it would either be something like that or it'd have to go maybe to the Planning Commission. But with all of that said, I just think it's something important that we do. And I've put together, and I can leave it with you, a little recommended resolution. I'm retired. I have a little more time than most. And so I've got a sample of one that might be suitable. It takes out all the language that causes so much heartburn for everybody. It caused me heartburn because I looked down and read that, and I said, that's not what we want to do. All we're trying to do is just get a set of standards so when somebody comes in here, common sense standards, that when they build these things, they don't build them, and next thing you know, they're gone out of town. We can't find them. They've gone back to New Jersey or California, and our citizens are stuck with a problem. So that's what we're trying to prevent. So that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Commissioner Epperson.
I'd just like to thank John Freeman. I totally agree with everything he said. I think zoning and planning could do a lot of controlling on that. If they, we set our regulations to where we don't have all of these high-density subdivisions, that we could control a lot with that. So I want to thank him and appreciate everything he said.
Commissioner Boyette.
Yeah, since this might be my last time to speak, I just want to say thank you to Drew Hooker and the Courthouse and Property Committee for putting this together. Thank you for Mayor Graham's office for the work they did behind this, the IT people, the citizens who came tonight, and the experts that came tonight to speak. I appreciate everyone coming out. It was very informative, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do that.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Smith.
Folks, I've lived in Bedford County all my life. I farm for a living, and ain't a soul in this room that hates a damn subdivision worse than I do. I wish we could put a gate on every road that comes into Bedford County, but we can't. We got to accept that fact, and we got to do something to control growth. Now, I asked Johnny Reed. He gave me the deeds that he has recorded now in the last 3 years, and his writing plainly states the deeds, property being sold has doubled, plats is double, notice of completions is double, quick claim deeds have tripled. Okay, I went to the zoning board and asked them to give me some updates on their behavior, and theirs, the building permits are up 15%, small subdivisions are up 21%, minor subdivisions are 300% increase in the last 3 years. What I would like to see, and I hope we're working in that direction, is some way to limit and control the amount of houses that we have in this county. I love my darn farmland, and I hate to see people give it up.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All right, not seeing anything else. Yes, Commissioner Neely.
Okay, so as I've listened to this, and I appreciate everyone's input tonight, my observation of this would be what we've talked about and what was brought to us is a way to allow these huge subdivisions to come in. I personally think that through planning and the regulations, through planning and zoning, we can control this. Up to this point, we have controlled PUDs and other large subdivisions from coming to Bedford County because the process comes to the commission and we're able to thumb up or thumb down. I am like the others who have spoke. We don't have infrastructure. We are struggling to provide schools for the children who are coming here. We do not have roads. We're putting a strain on our water system. And, yes, we'd like to say no to everything, but I just think there's another way besides this authority and this document that we've had to slow the growth down and minimize the sizes of these subdivisions. I'm in agreement. 1 acre, 1 park site, and we roll with that.
All right, anybody else on the commission or committee that wants to make a statement? Yeah, I'm going to make I just thought it was interesting that we identified, sorry, Commissioner Thomas.
And Diane, and you saying that made me think a little bit. So if you have someone that comes in and they want to develop say a 25 house subdivision, and they choose to put in a drip system for those 25 houses, even though those houses are sitting on 1 acre lots, they can still put in the drip system because the state's going to allow it. Is that, am I correct in saying that, or if I misunderstood it? So
at the current time, yes.
Yes, so that's what the authority could say yes or no at that point. I'm just trying to get clarified in my mind. Yes, even though they want to build 25 houses, set them on 1 acre, they can still have a drip system. They don't have to have a septic system on their property. And everybody chime in here if I'm misunderstanding this.
No, I think you're right on that. At the current time, with the current regulations that we have here in the county and the state regulations, that it's 1 acre, perkable land, and they could do the step system, but I believe that is only if it is certified as a PUD through zoning. Is that correct? Okay. I may have misunderstood that. So, but, yeah, go ahead.
But yes, Commissioner Hooker, with PUDs, and John Freeman, yeah, he's still here. For whatever reasons, PUDs with some of our members on the commission, it's like you're going to ask them to throw up next. But with PUDs, with the Planning Commission, we can mandate everything. We can tell them to do this, tell them to do that, how to plan it, how to whatever. So yes, we could do more restrictions with the PUDs, but that's not been a flavor that has been accepted by this commission. But right now, and this might be an answer to Diane's, planning and zoning, minimum 1 acre per lot, if it perks, but you can do whatever you want to on the septic.
Yeah, just going back to the comment that I was going to make is I thought it was eye-opening that now we have other options that I did not know we had. Because whenever we brought this authority, I thought that was the only avenue to control this. Now knowing that planning and zoning has that option, I think that is an attractive option to me because of the fact that we still retain control over all that. Because again, going back to our first expert that talked, we have to be very, very cautious that if we go through the authority route, we lose authority. Yes, it is an authority, but we, as the commission, the county, the constituents, lose authority over wastewater. Now, an unelected board, very similar to other boards that we have, now controls that. And so again, we can't, we can place people on there, but then we're begging them to please try to do this. But we can't have any enforcement over that. So again, going back to the committee, I just want to make sure that there's no specific comments or questions that you four have on this, because here in just a minute, we've got to make a recommendation to the commission whether this document in whole, because again, even though John T. had a conversation and there is some editing that I think could happen to it, I think that is not our authority to do. We were given the authority from the commission to review this and make a recommendation on the document we have in front of us. So again, does any of you four have a question or a comment that you would like to make before we make that motion?
I do have one other little question. John's still here. You're with Shovel Power, right? Can y'all do this for us? Take over the step system inspection, control, make sure they're good, whatever. Can we contract with y'all?
So this was brought up to Shovel Power, Water, and Sewer several months ago. We had a PUD that wanted to come in that was in the county. They tried to annex and try to have a step system come in for us. They were going to have a controlling authority operating that system. And if it failed, our group was going to have to take over that system. And our board soon passed a policy directly after that that we would never accept a step system. We have a sewer plant, and it's a chore in itself. If y'all know, I mean, we spent $25 million back in 2008, and we're still paying on that. So it's a chore just to keep up a sewer system.
Commissioner Neely.
Okay, so I understand the acre thing and the park site, they could put in a step system, but could we regulate that, the ability to have a step system or not in those smaller developments through planning and zoning?
I believe based on what we heard is it could be regulated through planning and zoning as one of the three options that we were given. Again, Williamson County, what I understand, and again, you know, I'm not 100% an expert on anywhere close to this, but what I understand is they have done a lot of regulations through their planning and zoning to limit specifically high-density homes out in the county. They were identifying infrastructure issues out in their rural areas, specifically fire protection as well as school systems, and so they were looking at ways to limit high-density homes. And again, as Mr. Freeman said, I think it's less about to me, it's less about the step systems and more about the high-density homes. And if you start regulating that we are not wanting these high-density subdivisions, that slowly starts to, they won't need the step systems if they're not high density. That's the reason that they need these, is because, again, they're not wanting to put in 200 septic tanks. So the reason why is that I think that is more of the avenue that we need to be talking about rather than trying to create an authority. I think that we need to be talking about how we limit these high-density homes. I hear over and over, the growth is coming, the growth is coming. Well, unfortunately, we do get to control how that growth comes into this county. So the thing is we've got to step up as a commission and come up with the way that we want this growth to come in. We don't need to just stand at the county line with a for sale sign and give up all of our quality farmland across this county. I have a bumper sticker on my truck for a reason that says keep Bedford County rural. And the reason why is because that's where I want to live. I don't want to live in Rutherford County. I chose not to do that. I went to school in MTSU and I made a choice to settle my family in this county. And the reason why is for the people and the land. I don't want to drive through Bell Buckle and not see the hills anymore. I want to be able to make sure and maintain this county. So again, back to the committee, we've got to make a recommendation. So you've heard all the expert testimony. You've heard all the questions and comments from the rest of your commissioners. Do I have a motion on the floor for either an acceptance of this document with a favorable or unfavorable going back to the commission?
Motion for an unfavorable recommendation.
I have a motion for an unfavorable on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll make the second.
I have a second with Commissioner Neely. Any discussion from the committee? Seeing none. Go ahead, Commissioner Thompson.
Drew, once we send this with an unfavorable recommendation, what's the process after that when it goes to the commission? I know it'll be on the agenda. It will be an unfavorable recommendation. Will we continue to vote on that at the commission? And could this be passed at the commission even though we send it with unfavorable recommendation?
Yes, just like any committee, this is just making a recommendation. It would take a 2/3 vote from the commission to approve this, to be able to send a private act. And again, even with discussions with John T., this document will come back to the commission as a whole document as it was currently written. There will be no edits unless there's edits made on the floor of the commission. There may be recommendations or conversations, but again, I would not feel comfortable as an individual commissioner making any decisions for that for the group. So again, that would come back to the commission. A 2/3 vote would either up or down that particular piece of legislation. All right, any other comments from the committee? All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Keith Davis, Adam Thomas, Troy Thompson.
That's a yes.
Diane Neely.
Yes.
Chair votes aye. That's unanimous for unfavorable going back to the commission. All right, again, I think that's all we have on our agenda.
Move to approve.